The text message came on a Thursday morning, the kind that starts like any other coffee brewing news, murmuring on the TV. Sunlight leaking through blinds that hadn't been opened in days. My phone buzzed once. A name appeared, Karen, my ex-wife. I hadn't seen that name flash across my screen in months. For a second, I almost didn't open it. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, especially when it comes dressed as nostalgia. "Hey, Daniel." The message began casual as ever. "Just wanted to let you know the guest list for Ryan's wedding is finalized. It's a bit tight this year. Hope you understand, a bit tight." I read it again, then again. It didn't make sense. Ryan was my son, my only child. The same boy whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose first car I'd fixed, whose college tuition I'd paid without a single complaint. Now I wasn't important enough for a seat at his wedding. The coffee machine beeped behind me, but I couldn't move. My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles went white. I scrolled back up, hoping I'd misread it. I hadn't. I could almost hear Karen's voice, light and dismissive, softening cruelty into polite indifference. It was always her gift, making betrayal sound like an apology. For a long minute I stood in my kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator, and the distant sound of morning traffic filling the space where my heartbeat should have been. Then I did what I'd always done when life kicked me in the gut. I called her. She answered on the second ring, her voice smooth, cheerful. "Daniel, wow, it's been a while." "Karen," I said evenly. "I just got your message." The guest list. There was a pause long enough to tell me she'd been waiting for this call. "Oh, right. Yes, about that. Please don't take it personally. Ryan and Lydia had to keep things small. You know how expensive weddings are these days." I let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "Small?" I asked. "How small are we talking?" She hesitated. "Around 180 guests. 180? I nearly laughed out loud. "So small you couldn't fit his father in." Karen sighed the way she always did when she wanted to sound like the victim. "Don't make this a big deal, Daniel. It's just a wedding. Just a wedding." The words burned slow and deep. "That's easy to say when you're invited," I said quietly. "You know how Ryan is," she continued. "He didn't want tension. He thought it would be simpler this way. Simpler. The polite word for cruel." For a moment I couldn't even answer. My mind ran through years of memories teaching Ryan how to drive, standing in the rain during his baseball games, the two of us eating cheap pizza after his first heartbreak. All those nights I told him, no matter what happened, his dad would always show up. And now, on the biggest day of his life, I wasn't even allowed to be in the room. "Daniel," Karen said, finally her tone softening like she was petting a wound she'd just made. "Don't take it so personally. You know Ryan loves you. He's just trying to keep things calm. Calm." The word snapped something in me. I didn't shout, didn't curse. I'd done that before years ago when the divorce was fresh and anger was easy. This time I just felt tired. Bone tired. "Calm," I repeated. "You mean peaceful? The kind of peace where I'm invisible." "Daniel, please." I hung up before she could finish. The silence that followed was heavy, almost comforting. I walked to the window and looked out at the Seattle skyline. Rain clouds were gathering over the Sound, the kind of gray that could stay for weeks. Maybe that was why the city and I got along so well. We both knew how to keep our storms quiet. For a long time I stood there staring at nothing, replaying the same thought in my head. He didn't even tell me himself. That was the part that hurt most. Not the exclusion, not the humiliation, but the silence. After a while I sat down at my old wooden desk, the one that had survived the divorce when so much else hadn't. I opened my laptop out of habit, pretending I had work to do, pretending the empty calendar meant something other than loneliness. An unread email blinked at the top of my inbox. Subject line: conference invitation. Bali Resort Development. It was from Victor Hale, my old business partner. We hadn't spoken in years, not since he retired early and started living out his dream as a business consultant in paradise. I clicked it open. Dan, the email began. Heading to Bali next week for a potential investment project. Could use your brain for a few days if you're free. Expenses on me. Think of it as a paid vacation. I stared at the screen, my reflection faint in the glow of the monitor. The idea of leaving suddenly didn't feel irresponsible, it felt necessary. I opened a travel site. Bali, blue water, white sand, palm trees bending under sunlight. A world away from Karen's voice and Ryan's silence. For a moment, guilt tried to whisper. Shouldn't I call my son? Try again? Maybe ask him why. But I knew how that conversation would go. He'd say it wasn't personal, that I was overreacting. That line had been rehearsed so many times, it might as well have been family tradition. No, I thought. Not this time. If I wasn't invited to my son's wedding, I'd invite myself to peace. I typed in my credit card information and clicked Book Now. The confirmation email appeared instantly. Flight to Denpasar, business class. Departing Saturday, 7:25 a.m. I leaned back in my chair, exhaled, and felt the faintest trace of relief. It wasn't joy, not yet, but it was something lighter than anger. As the rain began tapping against the window, I imagined the look on Karen's face when she realized I wasn't going to beg, wasn't going to argue, wasn't going to show up outside the chapel like some desperate ex-father in a bad movie. No. I'd be somewhere else. Somewhere warm, quiet, and far from all of them. For years I had been the fixer, the reliable one, the man who kept things together, even when no one said thank you. But something inside me shifted that morning. I was done holding up walls for people who kept pushing me out. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of whiskey, even though it was barely noon, and raised it toward the cloudy skyline. To Ryan, I said softly, "May your small wedding fit your small circle." Then I drank slow and deliberate, letting the burn spread through my chest. The phone buzzed again, another message from Karen, unread. I turned it face down on the table and stared out at the rain. They banned me from the wedding, I whispered to myself, the faintest smile tugging at my mouth. But they just opened the door to my freedom. The morning I left Seattle, the sky looked undecided, caught between rain and silence. That strange gray stillness that makes you question if the world is pausing for a moment or simply forgetting to move. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe anyone one. I packed one suitcase, my passport, and a book I probably wouldn't read, then locked the door behind me. The house felt lighter when I closed it, as if it had been waiting for this goodbye longer than I had. At the airport, I moved through the crowds like a ghost in slow motion. Families were reuniting, couples were arguing about boarding passes, kids were crying, and yet I was floating somewhere above it all. Detached. Peaceful in a strange kind of way. I bought a black coffee that tasted like cardboard and sat near a window where I could see planes taking off into the low, heavy clouds. I took out my phone. The message thread with Ryan still glowed on the screen, the last unread line from him, saying, "Thanks for understanding, Dad. It's just a small wedding." I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. There were so many words I could have written. None of them would have changed anything. I locked the phone and turned it face down on the table. For years I had been the one who called first, who fixed things, who kept the peace, even when no one else was trying. This time I wasn't going to chase anyone. I was done being the quiet glue that held together people who didn't notice when it cracked. I had learned that sometimes silence isn't avoidance, it's survival. I heard a familiar voice before I saw him. "Still punctual as ever, Dan. You know the plane won't take off without you, right?" I looked up. Victor Hale, same confident grin, same careless energy. He wore a navy linen shirt and sunglasses, even though we were indoors. He looked like the kind of man who hadn't worried about anyone's opinion in decades. "Victor," I said, standing to shake his hand. "You haven't changed." "I'd take that as a compliment if I didn't know how tired you sound," he replied, chuckling. "You ready for paradise?" "Ready enough," I said. We sat together at the boarding gate, and for a while it almost felt like old times, the two of us talking business and pretending we hadn't grown old doing it. Victor pulled out a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. "Take a look at this," he said. "Eco Resort Plan. Investors want someone with your eye for design. It's a gold mine, Dan. You could consult, give it that Turner touch." I scanned the documents. The blueprints were clean, ambitious buildings, nestled into cliffs, designed to look like part of the landscape. I could already imagine the way the light would hit the glass at sunrise. "You're serious about this?" I asked. Victor grinned. "Always. You'll love it there. And let's be honest, you could use a project that doesn't involve explaining yourself to anyone." I smiled faintly. "That part sounds nice." He leaned back, studying me. "You told your family you're coming?" "No," I said simply. "Ah." He nodded. "Then this trip's not just business. It's a declaration. The announcement for our flight came over the intercom." We gathered our things and joined the line. As the plane taxied out onto the runway, I glanced out the window. The city stretched beneath the fog, cold and distant, all steel and rain, and half-buried memories. When the wheels lifted off the ground, I felt something inside me lift too. The weight I'd been carrying for years, the guilt, the bitterness, the habit of waiting for approval slipped just a little. Victor nudged me once we were in the air. "Champagne," I nodded. The flight attendant poured us each a glass, the bubbles catching the cabin lights. Victor raised his. "To freedom, my friend." I clinked his glass. "To peace." For the first few hours, we talked about everything except family. Victor told stories about his retirement in Thailand, his brief marriage to a painter, his newfound obsession with surfing, even though he couldn't swim. I listened, laughed a little, and found it surprisingly easy to relax. Somewhere over the Pacific, I leaned my seat back, looked out the window at the endless blue, and thought, maybe this is what letting go really feels like. When the cabin lights dimmed for dinner, I checked my phone again out of habit. No new messages. The chat with Ryan stayed frozen at that last line. "It's just a small wedding." My thumb hovered over the screen again, then dropped it into the seat pocket. Enough ghosts for one day. Victor noticed. "You still thinking about it?" "I'm thinking about how small looks a lot like invisible," I said. He gave a slow nod. "You know, sometimes being left out is the best way to find out where you really stand." I looked at him. "You sound like you've rehearsed that." "Divorce will teach you things," he said, smirking, "including when to stop showing up to people who don't notice when you're gone." That line stayed with me. By the time we landed, the sun was just beginning to rise over Bali. The plane doors opened and a wave of warm air rushed in, thick with salt flowers, and something else I couldn't quite name, maybe forgiveness. Outside, a driver was waiting with a placard that read, "Mr. Hale and Mr. Turner." We climbed into the car, a sleek black SUV with chilled towels and cold water in the back seat. Victor leaned his head back. "Welcome to Paradise, Dan. You're going to like it here." I looked out the window as the car wound its way along the coastline. Palm trees leaned lazily over narrow roads. Motorbikes darted past in streaks of color. The ocean glimmered beside us like glass. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was running away from something. I felt like I was driving towards something new. Victor broke the silence. "You ever think maybe being banned from that wedding was a blessing?" I smiled faintly. "I'm starting to." He laughed. "Good. You're free, Dan. Don't waste it." We passed a small temple along the road, bright offerings of flowers and fruit placed neatly on stone steps. I found myself whispering under my breath, "Let them have their wedding. I'll have my peace." The driver turned slightly. "You say something, sir?" I shook my head. "Just thinking." When we reached the resort, the staff greeted us with garlands and cold drinks. The lobby was open air filled with the scent of frangipani and the soft sound of running water. I felt strangely out of place, like a man who had accidentally walked into his own afterlife. The receptionist smiled warmly. "Welcome home, Mr. Turner." Home. That word struck me harder than it should have. In my suite, I stood at the window overlooking the ocean. The horizon stretched endlessly sunlight, breaking through a thin veil of clouds. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. For a second, I thought it might be Ryan. It wasn't. A spam email from my internet provider. I laughed one of those quiet, private laughs that come from somewhere deeper than humor. Then I took a picture of the view legs, stretched out, drink in hand, the sea glowing like molten glass. I typed the caption, "Guess I got cut from the guest list, but I think I'll survive." For a moment, I hesitated before hitting post. Then I thought of Karen's voice, Ryan's silence, and the cold kitchen I'd left behind. I tapped share. The notifications came fast, likes, comments, laughing emojis from old colleagues and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. I didn't care about the numbers. I just cared that the noise wasn't coming from guilt this time. It was coming from laughter. Victor walked in a few minutes later with 2 glasses of wine. "You look lighter already." "I think I am," I said. He raised his glass, to leaving the noise behind. I raised mine, to learning I was never the noise to begin with. The waves crashed below us, steady and endless. I leaned back in my chair, the glass cool in my hand, the air heavy with salt and the promise of quiet. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the man left behind. I felt like the one finally moving forward. They could have their wedding. I had something better, my silence, my peace, and a one-way ticket to freedom. The heat hit me the moment I stepped off the plane, thick, warm, and alive. It smelled like salt hibiscus and a faint sweetness I couldn't name. The air itself seemed to hum. I paused for a moment at the top of the jet bridge, breathing it in. After years of Seattle drizzle and muted skies, the sunlight felt almost personal, like something I hadn't earned but was being offered anyway. "Welcome to Bali," my friend Victor said beside me, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Smells like freedom, doesn't it?" "Freedom with humidity," I replied, wiping my forehead. We laughed, and it was the first real laugh I'd had in weeks. Outside the terminal, the crowd was a blur of colors, drivers holding up signs, taxi horns, laughter in a dozen languages. A young man stood apart holding a neat placard that read, "Mr. Hale and Mr. Turner." We followed him through the chaos to a black SUV with tinted windows and soft Balinese music playing from hidden speakers. The driver handed us chilled towels and bottles of water, then slid behind the wheel with a polite nod. As we pulled out of the airport, I leaned my head against the window. The city streets were crowded but not noisy, vendors selling fruit. Children chasing each other, barefoot scooters weaving through traffic like a choreographed dance. The further we drove, the more open it became, narrow roads lined with rice fields, small temples tucked between trees, and glimpses of the ocean flickering like blue glass between the hills. Victor was talking about something, investors, construction timelines, but I only half listened. My mind was somewhere between the present and the memory of a different kind of drive, one that ended at a wedding I'd never attend. "Hey," Victor said, nudging me with his elbow. "You're not drifting on me already, are you?" "Just thinking," I said. "That's dangerous at your age," he teased. "Everything is," I replied, smiling faintly. We drove in silence for a while. The road curved along the coastline now, and the sea appeared vast, bright, endless. the kind of blue that made you forget cities existed. When we finally arrived at the resort, the air smelled of plumeria and ocean spray. The entrance was framed by two massive wooden doors carved with intricate patterns. As they opened, the lobby revealed itself open-air polished marble floors, palm trees swaying gently inside, and a view straight through to the ocean. It was the kind of place that seemed designed not just to impress you, but to quiet you. A smiling receptionist greeted us with flower leaves and 2 glasses of something cold and citrusy. "Welcome to the Ocean Pearl Resort," she said warmly. "Mr. Turner, Mr. Hale, your suites are ready." Victor took his drink and grinned. "See, I told you, paradise." I nodded, scanning the space. "I've been to a lot of places, but this one actually feels like it remembers how to breathe." Our rooms were side by side. Mine had floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the horizon, a balcony with a small infinity pool, and a king-sized bed that looked like it had never known worry. I dropped my bag near the door and stepped outside. The sound of waves was constant but soft, steady as breathing. For a long time, I just stood there, letting the wind move through me. On the nightstand sat the wedding gift I'd meant to give Ryan, a small box wrapped in navy paper. I picked it up, weighed it in my hand. Inside was a gold compass I'd had engraved, "Always find your way home." I had planned to hand it to him before the ceremony, a symbolic reminder that no matter where he went, I'd be there. Now it felt more like a message to myself. I set it down and walked to the balcony. The sky was streaked with orange and pink, the sun melting into the horizon. Victor called from his room next door. "Dinner in 30. Don't make me come drag you out of paradise." "Wouldn't dream of it," I shouted back. I took out my phone and snapped a photo of the ocean, the balcony, my drink resting on the edge of the pool. Then I typed a caption. "Guess I got cut from the guest list, but I think I'll survive." For a moment I hesitated. Posting it felt childish, maybe petty. But then I remembered the text from Karen. The silence from Ryan, the months of being polite while they wrote me out of their story. Maybe this wasn't pettiness. Maybe it was truth. I hit post. The reactions came fast, laughing emojis from old colleagues, supportive comments from cousins. Even my sister wrote, "Good for you." They didn't deserve you there anyway. Victor knocked and stepped in, reading over my shoulder. "That's one hell of a statement, Dan." "It's not a statement," I said. "It's a status update." He laughed. "Same thing these days." We went to dinner at the outdoor terrace restaurant overlooking the sea. Lanterns hung from the trees, casting gold light across the tables. The menu was elegant, but simple grilled fish, jasmine rice, mango salad. Over wine, Victor leaned back and said, "You know, you could have stayed home and sulked, but you came here instead. That's a power move." "Power move?" "Yeah," he said, pointing with his fork. "Choosing peace over pity. That's the rare kind of revenge people never see coming." I thought about that as the waves echoed below. Maybe he was right. Maybe this wasn't an escape. Maybe it was a return to myself, to something I'd lost, while trying to be everything to everyone else. After dinner, we walked along the beach. The sand was cool beneath my feet, the air heavy with salt and the scent of burning incense from a nearby temple. In the distance, a group of locals released lanterns into the sky, tiny lights drifting upward like quiet hopes. Victor looked at me. "What are you thinking about?" "About how strange it is to find peace this far from home," I said. He smiled. "Maybe home was never the place, Dan. Maybe it's the person you become when you stop chasing people who left." We stood there for a long while, neither of us talking. The sea kept whispering its own sermon, endless and patient. When I returned to my room, I saw the compass on the nightstand again, catching the lantern light through the window. I picked it up, turned it over, read the engraving once more. "Always find your way home." I walked out to the balcony, the night sky wide and full of stars. Below, the tide reached higher, pulling at the edge of the beach as if trying to erase something. I opened the box, held the compass in my palm for a moment, then let it fall into the sea. It flashed once in the moonlight before disappearing into the dark water. "Home," I whispered. "Found it." Then I sat back down, legs stretched out, the wind soft against my face. Somewhere behind me, my phone buzzed with notifications. I ignored them. The ocean had all the conversation I needed. They could keep their guest list. I had my view, my peace, my freedom. And for the first time in years, I realized that being left out wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me. It might just have been the best. I woke to the sound of waves tapping softly against the rocks below. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was, the air too warm, the silence too kind. Then it came back to me. The reason I was here wasn't peace. It was exile. People think being banned from a wedding is a joke, something fit for gossip or a family anecdote. But it's different when it's your own son who erased your name from the guest list. That kind of exclusion doesn't sting, it hollows you out. I stepped out onto the balcony, the morning light spilling across the ocean like liquid glass. The water looked infinite. I didn't. As I leaned against the railing, coffee in hand, the sound of the waves became a heartbeat I hadn't realized I'd missed. They reminded me of another kind of sound, the closing of a door on the day Karen left. Not loud, just final. I took a sip, the bitterness grounding me, and for a moment I let myself drift backward in time. We had been married 15 years when she told me she was done. We were sitting in a cafe downtown, halfway through a conversation that had gone nowhere for years. She looked at me across the table, calm as ever, and said, "You've become impossible to talk to." I remember setting down my cup, the clink of porcelain louder than her voice. "Impossible?" I asked. "Practical," she corrected. "Everything has to be efficient with you, Daniel. Even love." She left the next morning, no shouting, no tears, just a note on the kitchen counter and a stack of legal papers she'd already signed. My lawyer said I was being too generous when I agreed to everything she wanted: the house, half my company shares, custody of Ryan. But I wasn't thinking about money. I was thinking about survival. I figured if I made it easy, maybe it would hurt less. I was wrong. The day the divorce was finalized, Ryan was 15. He sat in the passenger seat of my truck, silent, staring out the window. I told him, "This doesn't change how much I love you." He nodded without looking at me. "Mom says you care more about work than people." That one landed deeper than anything Karen had ever said. Because it came from him, from my son. Over the years, I kept showing up. Birthdays, graduations, random Tuesdays, when he needed help fixing his car or filling out college applications. I was always there, even when he wasn't really looking for me. I paid half his rent after he graduated. I covered the deposit for his first apartment. When he called to say he was engaged to Lydia, I congratulated him before I could even remember who she was. Lydia. The name alone made me tighten my grip on the coffee cup. I'd met her once, a dinner where she smiled too much and listened too little. She was the kind of woman who liked the idea of people not the people themselves. She called me Mr. Turner, even after I told her not to. The whole night, Karen sat there glowing, proud of herself, watching them, like a stage director admiring her masterpiece. Later, when Ryan asked for financial help to get things started, I didn't hesitate. I wired $25,000 into his account. He said it would help him build his business. Months later, I found out it bought Lydia's engagement ring. I should have been angry, but mostly I was tired. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always arrive as a knife. Sometimes it comes wrapped in politeness. I thought about that as I looked out over the ocean. The waves kept rolling in, steady and endless, like time itself refusing to stop for anyone's mistakes. Behind me, the sliding door opened. "You're up early," Victor said, stepping outside with 2 cups of coffee. "I couldn't sleep," I admitted. "The ocean's louder than I expected." "Loud," he grinned. "That's the sound of freedom, my friend." He handed me a cup and leaned on the railing beside me. "You've been quiet lately, more than usual." I nodded. "I've been remembering things I don't want to." He sipped his coffee. "Let me guess, her and him," I said. Victor studied me for a moment. "You ever wonder if letting go and giving up are just different names for the same thing?" "Not this time," I said. "Letting go feels like breathing. Giving up used to feel like drowning." We stood there in silence, watching the light climb across the horizon. The air smelled like salt and rain. After Victor left for a meeting with the investors, I sat down at the small writing desk in the corner of my suite. The wood was smooth, cool under my hands. I opened my notebook and began to write. Not to Ryan or Karen, just to myself. "You've done enough explaining, Dan. You've done enough fixing. Let the world build its own bridges this time." I stopped halfway through the sentence. The urge to reach for my phone crept in again. To text Ryan something measured and calm, something that would prove I was still the bigger person. I even typed it out. "You once said you'd want me by your side when you got married. I guess people change. Just know this love doesn't vanish. It just stops waiting." I stared at the words for a long minute, then deleted them. The screen went black, and with it the weight in my chest eased a little. Some things are better left unsent. Later, when I joined Victor for lunch, he could tell I'd been wrestling with ghosts. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said, though the word didn't feel true yet. He gave me a look that said he didn't believe me, but wouldn't push. "You know," he said, "not every silence needs to be filled. Sometimes it's the only way to hear yourself." I nodded. I'm starting to understand that. The afternoon passed quietly. I walked along the beach, my feet sinking into the wet sand, each step erased by the next wave. Kids laughed in the distance, their parents watching from shaded chairs. I envied their simplicity, their ability to exist without carrying a history behind every breath. By the time the sun dipped low, the horizon glowed red and gold. I thought about Karen again, about how she must have spun this whole thing to Ryan, convincing him I was too bitter, too unpredictable to be at his wedding. It wasn't cruelty. It was control disguised as concern. She'd been doing it for years, soft power, gentle lies. I imagined Ryan standing there, listening, nodding, not realizing how easily love can sound like logic when it comes from the wrong person. Maybe one day he'd see it. Maybe he wouldn't. Either way, I was done proving my worth to people who needed my absence to feel powerful. When I got back to my room, the sky had gone dark. I poured a glass of whiskey and stepped out onto the balcony again. The ocean glimmered silver under the moonlight. Somewhere out there, beyond that horizon, my son was probably sitting in a room full of family who didn't know what they'd broken. I raised my glass toward the waves. To them I murmured, to everything they'll never understand. Then I drank slow and steady. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain and something clean. Something like forgiveness, maybe. I closed my eyes and let it wash over me. For once, I didn't need an answer. I didn't need an apology. They could keep their silence. I had mine. And it was louder than anything they'd ever said. By the third morning in Bali, I realized I hadn't checked the time once. There was something liberating about waking up without an alarm, without obligations, without the invisible leash of other people's expectations. The sun did the announcing, the ocean did the reminding. The world moved whether I looked at a clock or not. I ordered breakfast on the terrace, coffee strong enough to wake the dead tropical fruit that tasted like color itself, and pancakes so light they almost floated. The waiter set the tray down and bowed slightly before leaving me to the sound of waves. I ate slowly, deliberately savoring the silence. For years I'd eaten meals in silence too, but they were the wrong kind tension hanging in the air like fog. This was different. This silence was a friend. Victor joined me half an hour later, his shirt already half unbuttoned, sunglasses on, carrying 2 more coffees, like a man determined to over-caffeinate peace itself. "You're officially unreachable," he said, dropping into the seat across from me. "How does it feel like I've been found?" I said. He grinned. "You know you could get used to this. Mornings without arguments, days without phone calls asking you to fix something you didn't break." "I could," I admitted, "but I don't want to turn peace into another obligation." Victor raised his cup. "To that." We drank the breeze soft against our faces. For a while, neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. There's a particular comfort that comes when silence is shared and not awkward. After breakfast, Victor left for a quick call with the investors. I stayed behind, walking barefoot along the resort's infinity pool that seemed to spill directly into the ocean. The water was still reflecting my face, and the morning sky in equal measure. I didn't look tired anymore. I looked lighter. Maybe it was the sun. Maybe it was the decision to stop chasing people who only turned around when I stopped walking. A woman nearby laughed a sound bright and free. I looked over. She was teaching her young daughter how to swim. The little girl flailed, splashing water everywhere. "Don't fight it," the mother said gently. "Just float." I smiled. Maybe life worked the same way. When Victor returned, he found me sitting on a lounge chair staring out at the horizon. "You look like a man having an epiphany," he said. "I was just thinking," I replied, "how long it's taken me to understand that peace isn't something you chase. It's something that happens when you stop running." Victor chuckled. "And here I thought you'd turned philosophical because of the fruit platter." He sat down beside me, opening his folder. "The investors want to meet tonight. Private dinner. You should come. It's time to remind the world you still know how to build." I hesitated. "I came here to stop building," maybe he said, "but maybe this time you build for yourself." His words lingered. There was something about them that hit a part of me I'd forgotten existed. The part that used to feel alive when I created, when I shaped something that outlasted arguments and failures. "All right," I said finally. "Dinner then." "Good," Victor said, standing. "Just wear something that says, 'Wise, not retired.'" When he left again, I sat there for a long time. The waves rolled in and out, whispering their endless, patient truths. For years I'd tried to be the stillness for everyone else, the dependable one, the fixer, the man who never snapped. And all it did was leave me empty. But now sitting here, I could feel the stillness finally belonging to me. By late afternoon, I'd fallen into a rhythm that felt almost holy. Read a few pages of an old novel, nap, swim, drink, repeat. My phone sat untouched on the nightstand. The absence of noise had become its own luxury. As the sun began to dip, I got dressed for dinner. White linen shirt, dark slacks, nothing fancy. Victor was waiting by the terrace, already surrounded by 2 of the investors. They were polite, curious men from Singapore, sharp-eyed and well-spoken. We talked over grilled fish and wine that caught the last light of sunset. The conversation drifted easily between architecture, travel, and life. At one point, one of them leaned in and asked Mr. Turner, "What inspires you now that you've stopped working?" I smiled. "Peace," I said. "It's an undervalued resource." The man laughed. "And how do you define peace?" "Knowing when to stop fixing what's already broken," I replied. They nodded thoughtfully. Victor raised his glass toward me. "Gentlemen, that's why I brought him here." Dinner ended with laughter, toasts, and handshakes. The investors left impressed, promising to call. Victor lingered, looking at me. "You were good in there, Dan. Sharp, calm, confident. You sure you don't miss the stage?" "I don't miss the applause," I said. I just forgot what it felt like to speak without defending myself. We left the restaurant and walked along the beach. The moon was rising, silver light stretching over the waves. I kicked off my shoes, feeling the cool sand under my feet. Victor stayed a few paces behind, humming some old jazz tune. I found a seashell, small and smooth, and rolled it between my fingers. "You ever notice," I said, "how the ocean doesn't fight the shore, even though it's been losing to it forever?" Victor smiled. "That's because the ocean knows every wave gets another chance." We stood there for a long time. The water crept closer, brushing over our ankles, then retreating. "You're healing," Victor said quietly. "I'm learning," I corrected. Healing sounds like waiting for something to stop hurting. Learning sounds like making sure it doesn't happen again. He laughed softly. "You always were better with words." Later that night, after Victor went back to his room, I sat alone on my balcony. I scrolled through my phone for the first time all day. Dozens of notifications, comments on my photo, messages from people I barely knew, some laughing, some cheering me on. But nothing from Ryan. Not that I expected it. I opened the camera instead. The beach was silver in the moonlight, the water calm, endless. I took a picture, not for anyone else this time, just for me. Then I typed a caption and saved it as a draft. "Peace doesn't need an invitation." I didn't post it. Some truths are better kept quiet. I set the phone down, leaned back in my chair, and closed my eyes. The ocean sang softly below its rhythm, steady and forgiving. I thought about everything I'd left behind, my son, my ex-wife, the house that felt smaller with every argument, and realized none of it felt like loss anymore. It felt like space. Space to breathe, to rebuild, to exist without performance. The breeze shifted, carrying the scent of frangipani. I smiled to myself. Tomorrow the world would keep spinning. Weddings would happen. Families would pretend. But for tonight, under this quiet moon, I was exactly where I needed to be. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting to be seen. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was simply here. And it was enough. The wedding day began with sunlight spilling across the curtains and the sound of bells drifting faintly from a nearby temple. They weren't my son's bells, of course. Those were thousands of miles away, probably chiming over a ceremony I wasn't meant to see. Still, the timing made me laugh. Life had a strange sense of humor. It knew when to echo. I sat on the balcony with my first cup of coffee, watching the sea stretch and shimmer under the early light. Somewhere in California, Ryan was probably putting on his tie, adjusting his cuffs, maybe rehearsing his vows. I pictured him standing there, surrounded by people who thought they understood family. The thought didn't hurt anymore. It just felt distant. Victor appeared in the doorway, already dressed in linen pants and a wide grin. "Morning, philosopher." "How's exile treating you? Better than most weddings," I said. He laughed, stepping onto the balcony. "Well, to peace then," he said, raising his cup of coffee like a toast. "To peace," I echoed. The day moved slowly. I swam in the pool, walked along the beach, read half a chapter of an old book I'd carried for years but never finished. The ocean breeze wrapped around me, like something sent to remind me that not all good things demand company. By noon, Victor knocked on my door holding 2 glasses of iced tea. "You do realize you're missing your son's big moment right about now?" he said with a teasing grin. I took the glass from him. "You do realize I'm perfectly fine with that." He sat across from me, shaking his head. "You're a strange man, Dan Turner. Most people would be miserable. Most people mistake guilt for love. I said. We clinked glasses, and Victor chuckled. You know you might be onto something. The afternoon stretched golden and quiet. I sat by the infinity pool again, phone resting face down beside me. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to check it. Instead, I pulled out my notebook and began sketching. Lines became shapes, shapes became buildings. The outlines of the eco-resort Victor had shown me days earlier started taking form on the page. I hadn't drawn in years. The pencil felt foreign at first, then natural, like remembering how to breathe. When Victor came by later, he leaned over my shoulder and whistled. There he is. The old architect rises again. Just keeping my hands busy, I said. Busy hands build better futures, he replied. He left me to my sketches, and I returned to my coffee. The sun was lowering now, turning the ocean into molten gold. I lifted my phone and snapped a photo, the horizon glowing, my legs stretched out, a drink beside me. Then I typed a caption, when one door closes, another opens. Preferably to a sea view suite. I hit post. Within minutes, the reactions rolled in, friends from the old days, cousins, even a few strangers who'd somehow followed me online. Comments like, "You're living the dream." "Dan in peace, looks good on you," filled the screen. I scrolled lazily, smiling. It wasn't about attention. It was about letting the world know that being forgotten didn't mean disappearing. A soft notification chimed. A private message from my sister Diane. "Ryan looks nervous. You should see him. It's live on Facebook." I laughed quietly and typed back, "Tell him to breathe. And tell Mom to stop pretending she organized the whole thing." She sent a laughing emoji, then nothing. By evening, I'd almost forgotten what day it was. The sea breeze had cooled. The sky was streaked with pink and lavender. Victor suggested dinner on the terrace again. We ordered grilled prawns, rice, and a bottle of wine that cost too much but felt justified. "To distance," Victor said, raising his glass. "To distance," I agreed. We ate, talked, laughed. For a moment it felt like friendship could be enough to replace family. Then, somewhere between the last bite of dinner and the first sip of dessert wine, my phone began to buzz. Once, then again, then continuously. Victor raised an eyebrow. "Popular tonight, huh?" I looked down. Mom, Ryan, Diane, over and over again. The list grew longer, names from home lighting up the screen like a panic alarm. My stomach tightened. "Let it go to voicemail," Victor said. "If it's important, they'll call again. They're already calling again," I said quietly. I finally answered one of Diane's texts. "Everything okay?" Her reply came almost instantly. "No, the wedding's a disaster." Lydia walked out. I blinked, unsure if I'd read it right. "Walked out," I typed back. "Yes." She ran away in the middle of the reception. Victor watched my expression shift. "Bad news?" I laughed under my breath, though it came out sounding closer to disbelief. "You could say that." "The bride left, just walked out." He let out a low whistle. "That's poetic." "Poetic," I repeated. "Come on," Victor said, grinning. "The guy who bans his father from the wedding ends up abandoned by his bride. The universe has a wicked sense of timing." I leaned back, eyes on the horizon. The waves shimmered beneath the rising moon. Somewhere out there, fate was laughing. More messages kept pouring in. My mother. "Call me, it's urgent." "Ryan, Dad, please." "Karen, this is serious, Daniel. Don't ignore me." I turned the phone face down on the table and reached for my drink. "You know," I said slowly, "for years I thought karma was just something people said to feel better. Now I think it might just be the world keeping its books balanced." Victor raised his glass again. "To cosmic accounting." We both laughed, the sound carried away by the wind. I didn't call anyone back. I didn't text. I didn't even open the voicemails. I sat there sipping my wine, watching the waves glow silver under the moonlight. The sound of the ocean was soft, patient, endless. Everything human chaos wasn't. When the night deepened and the resort lights began to dim, I stood and walked toward the edge of the beach. The sand was cool, smooth beneath my feet. Out there beyond the dark water, the world was unraveling without me. I whispered to the tide, "Let them clean their own mess." Victor called after me from the terrace. "Everything okay?" "Perfect," I said. He smiled. "You're taking this awfully well." "I'm taking it quietly," I replied. "That's better." He nodded once, then disappeared inside, leaving me alone with the sound of waves and the faint hum of distant music from the resort bar. I stood there for a long time, letting the water reach my ankles, then retreat, over and over again. A rhythm older than any wedding vow. When I finally turned back toward the hotel, I felt lighter. Not happy, not triumphant, just balanced. The phone buzzed one last time in my pocket. I didn't look. They had their wedding. I had my peace. And somehow, I'd won. The first thing I noticed was the sound, not the ocean this time, but the sharp, insistent vibration of my phone on the bedside table. It wouldn't stop buzzing. I rolled over, still half asleep, and saw the screen lighting up like a tiny storm in the dark. 3 missed calls from Karen, 6 from my sister, 2 from numbers I didn't recognize, and 1 from Ryan. For a moment, I just stared at it. The names blurred together, glowing against the darkness. The same people who told me to understand were now calling me in the middle of the night like the world was on fire. It was nearly midnight in Bali, and I didn't need a clock to know the timing was poetic. I sat up, turned on the lamp, and poured myself a glass of water. The air felt heavy, the kind of weight that comes before a confession. The phone buzzed again. I let it. I wasn't ready to answer. Finally, curiosity got the better of me. I swiped to open my messages. The first was from my cousin Diane. "Dan, you won't believe what just happened. The wedding. It's over." I frowned, scrolling down. "The groom, your son, had a fight with Lydia. She left, just walked out." I set the glass down, blinking. "She left." Another message appeared before I could even type back. "Yes." During the reception, she yelled at him, then disappeared. Nobody knows where she went. It's chaos here. I leaned back against the headboard, letting out a quiet breath. The ceiling fan spun lazily above me, slicing through the silence. Victor stirred in the next room. I could hear him talking in his sleep. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Karen. "Daniel, please call me. It's a disaster. Ryan's devastated. Everyone's blaming each other. You need to help." I laughed quietly to myself. Not a bitter laugh, something gentler, disbelieving. I typed one line back. "I thought you said it was just a wedding." Then I put the phone down and waited for the next wave. Within minutes, more notifications poured in. Messages, voicemails, missed calls. Ryan's name appeared again and again. My sister texted, "They're blaming you for not being here. Mom said the whole thing was cursed because you didn't attend." I almost choked on my laugh that time. "Cursed," I whispered. That's a new one. The irony was too perfect. They had cut me out to avoid embarrassment, to keep the family calm. And now somehow my absence was the root of their chaos. Victor knocked once before stepping into my room. His hair was a mess, his expression half amused, half concerned. "You planning to answer that? It's been vibrating for 15 minutes straight." I gestured to the screen. "Apparently the wedding's over." He blinked. "Over as in the bride left." Victor let out a low whistle, then grinned. "And they're calling you about it. You're a magician, Dan. You've managed to ruin a wedding you didn't even attend." I smirked, sipping the last of my water. Maybe that's my talent, being the scapegoat of other people's bad decisions. Victor leaned against the doorframe, watching me. You don't seem upset." "I'm not," I said. "I just finally feel like the universe decided to balance the books." He chuckled. "So karma's on duty tonight." "Looks like it." We both laughed, though quietly, like two men at a funeral who knew the deceased had it coming. The phone buzzed again. Ryan this time. I let it go to voicemail. When it stopped, I played it on speaker. "Dad, please, I don't know what to do. She's gone. Mom's losing it. Everyone's blaming everyone else. I need you." His voice cracked on that last word. Victor raised an eyebrow. "Wow. Guess the understanding father role is back on the table." I turned off the phone. "Not for me." He nodded slowly. "You sure about that? I've spent 30 years cleaning up their messes. They can mop this one without me." We sat in silence for a while, the sound of the waves bleeding in from outside. The moonlight cut across the floor like a ribbon of silver. Victor finally said, "You know, there's a certain poetry to this." "I know," I said. "It's almost cinematic. They banned me for peace and ended up with war." I stood and walked out to the balcony, the ocean glowing faintly under the moon. The breeze carried the scent of salt and rain. I closed my eyes, breathing it in. Behind me, Victor said softly, "They don't deserve your peace, Dan. That's why I'm keeping it." More messages arrived. My mother desperate. "Your son is breaking down. You can't just sit there while this family falls apart." I whispered the words aloud. "I already did, Mom." I sat there for years while it fell apart. The waves crashed softly against the shore, steady and eternal. I took another sip of water and felt something inside me loosen. The anger, the guilt, the endless loop of trying to be understood. It all drifted out with the tide. My phone buzzed again, another voicemail. I pressed play. Melissa's voice this time. "Hey, you're not going to believe this. Grandma told everyone the wedding was cursed because they didn't invite you. She actually said it into the microphone during dinner." People clapped. Karen threw her drink at Aunt Lisa. "Total meltdown. It's chaos, Dan. You'd have loved it." I laughed so hard Victor came running back into the room. "What Grandma told the entire wedding that karma came for them," I said between breaths. Karen threw a drink. Victor sat on the edge of the bed shaking his head. "That's not karma. That's theater." "Same thing," I said, still smiling. The laughter faded into a softer kind of quiet. I leaned on the railing looking out at the endless water. "You know what the best part is?" I asked. "What I didn't have to do anything. They destroyed themselves trying to look perfect." Victor nodded slowly. "That's the most satisfying kind of justice." By the time the moon hung high, I had stopped checking the phone altogether. It kept buzzing, but I didn't care. I knew how this story went. They'd beg, they'd blame, they'd rewrite the narrative to make themselves feel better. And I'd be expected to forgive them, to fix it. Not this time. I sat down in the lounge chair, the glass of whiskey cool in my hand. The sea kept rolling, eternal, indifferent. The sound was almost hypnotic. When the phone vibrated again, I picked it up just long enough to turn it off completely. The screen went black, reflecting only my face. I looked calm. Too calm. Victor watched me quietly from the doorway. "You really aren't going to call them, are you?" "No," I said. "They wanted me gone. Now they get to see what that really means." He smiled faintly. "To peace, then." I raised my glass. To absence, the loudest answer of all. The night settled around us, the sound of waves whispering against the shore. Somewhere across the ocean, the chaos continued, shouting, crying, blaming. But here there was only stillness. I leaned back, let the moonlight wash over me, and thought, they wrote me out of the story. But somehow I became the ending anyway. The next morning, when I woke, the phone was still dark and silent. The world hadn't ended. It never does when you stop chasing it. I stepped out onto the balcony again, the sunlight warm against my face. To peace, I murmured to myself, and to karma for keeping the score. The sun hadn't even risen when my phone began its next performance. I had turned it off the night before, but the moment I powered it back on to check the time, the screen erupted with notifications. 32 missed calls, 17 messages, 4 voicemails. The family that once couldn't find a moment for me had somehow found hours to panic. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat on the balcony watching the waves below crash in perfect rhythm. The sea didn't care about family drama. It kept moving, patient and indifferent. I envied it. One by one, I scrolled through the messages. Karen's was first. "Daniel, please answer. It's chaos here. Ryan is devastated. Lydia's family is furious. The press is calling. Please, we need you." Then Ryan, "Dad, I don't know what to do. Everything's falling apart. Please pick up." And finally, my mother. "You can't ignore your family in times like this. You're being childish. The word made me smile. It was always the same script. When they made a mess, I was the adult who fixed it. When I stopped fixing it, I became the child. I set the phone down, face down on the table, and took another slow sip of coffee. The steam rose gently, blurring the line between the sky and the sea. I decided I liked it better that way, everything soft, undefined, out of focus. A knock came at the door. Victor entered without waiting for me to answer, holding 2 plates of breakfast. "Morning, philosopher. You look way too calm for a man being hunted by his family." "They've made it their sport," I said, taking one of the plates. "What's new? Everyone's talking about the runaway bride," he said, settling into the chair across from me. "It's all over the internet. The whole city's gossiping about it. Good for them. Maybe it'll keep them from calling me for 10 minutes. He smirked. "You're not curious. Curiosity's expensive," I said. "Peace is cheaper." We ate quietly for a while, the only sounds the clink of forks and the faraway echo of waves. Victor finally said, "You're handling this better than most men would." "I'm not handling anything," I replied. "I'm just refusing to participate." He grinned. "That's a kind of handling." After breakfast, I opened my laptop, meaning to check the news. I didn't even have to search. There it was, plastered across every headline: "Runaway bride at high society wedding. Family in turmoil." The photo beneath it showed Ryan standing in front of the church, face pale, tie, undone eyes, hollow. Karen was behind him, mid-shout, and in the corner my mother's face frozen in disbelief. Someone had captured the exact moment chaos took shape. I scrolled through the comments beneath the article. Who bans their own father and expects blessings? Looks like karma RSVP'd early. Poor man. I'd have left too. For a second I felt something close to guilt, but it passed quickly, replaced by something colder, cleaner. Vindication, maybe, or peace wearing a sharper edge. Victor peeked at my screen. "See? You're famous." I closed the laptop. I prefer anonymity. Later, as I walked along the beach, my phone buzzed again. Voicemails. I let them play through my earbuds as I strolled barefoot in the sand. Karen's voice first, cracking, desperate. "Daniel, please. I know things got complicated, but this isn't the time for grudges. Ryan needs you. You're still his father." Then Ryan's voice, trembling. "Dad, I made a mistake. I should have stood up for you. I thought keeping the peace meant keeping you out. I was wrong. Please call me." I paused at the edge of the water, the tide washing over my feet. They always came back when things broke. Always needed my steadiness when their perfect image collapsed. And every time I'd gone running. But not this time. This time the silence was the answer. I let the voicemails finish, deleted them all, and kept walking. By noon, the resort was alive with laughter and movement, couples by the pool staff sweeping the paths, the distant sound of music from the bar. Life went on. No one cared about the Turners' latest scandal, and neither did I. At lunch, Victor found me again carrying a grin that told me he'd been waiting to deliver news. Guess what the gossip sites are eating this up? Apparently your mother and Karen got into a shouting match in front of reporters. Someone filmed it. I nearly spit out my drink. Of course they did. It gets better, he said, laughing. Your grandmother told everyone the wedding was doomed because they didn't invite you. She said it's divine payback. People applauded. I laughed so hard I had to put down my fork. Grandma always did have good timing. Victor shook his head. Your family could sell tickets to their chaos. Let them, I said. I'll stay in the front row, feet up, watching from the tropics. We clinked glasses, and for a moment, it all felt funny again. Tragic but funny, the kind of cosmic joke only life can write. That afternoon, as the sun began to fade, I took my phone and posted another photo. The view from my balcony. The sea stretching endlessly into gold and blue. My breakfast plate half empty. Caption, starting my day stress-free. Hope everyone back home is doing okay. Within minutes, the comments rolled in. Laughing emojis, heart reacts. One from my cousin, Melissa. This post cured my Monday. But one comment stood out from an unknown account. You left the wedding. It fell apart. Coincidence. I smirked and closed the app. Maybe coincidence, maybe consequence. Either way, I wasn't explaining myself. That night I poured myself a drink and sat on the balcony listening to the soft percussion of waves against the shore. My phone buzzed again, another message, this time from Ryan. Dad, I don't blame you. I just wish you were here. Maybe it wouldn't have gone wrong. I read it twice, then typed a reply. Son, sometimes things fall apart because they were never built right to begin with. Then I deleted it before sending. Victor came out holding his own glass. You ever gonna answer them? No, I said. If I fix this, they'll never learn what it feels like to clean up their own mess. He nodded slowly. To peace, then. To peace, I echoed, raising my glass. The moon rose high, painting the water silver. I leaned back, feeling the night settle over me. Behind me, my phone continued to buzz, but I let it fade into the sound of the waves. Somewhere across the world, my family was scrambling to rebuild their perfect image, desperate to restore what they'd broken. But here in the stillness of this place, I realized something profound. They were still chasing appearances. I was finally living truth. I closed my eyes, listening to the waves. Tomorrow, they'd still be calling. Tomorrow, they'd still be blaming. But tomorrow, I'd still be free. They had lost control. I had found peace. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel sorry for it at all. I was halfway through my second espresso when the message appeared, "Call me, you'll love this." It was from my cousin Melissa, the only one in my family who seemed to possess both a conscience and a sense of humor. I hesitated. Usually when someone started a message like that, chaos wasn't far behind. But curiosity has always been stronger than good sense, so I tapped call. The line barely rang once before her voice burst through fast, breathless, bubbling with laughter. Dan, are you sitting down? I'm on a balcony, I said. That count good. Because you're going to enjoy this. Karma didn't just knock on their door, it moved in. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. You have my attention. What happened now? Melissa took a quick breath. After Lydia ran off, everything exploded. Not literally, but close. The reception turned into a war zone. Mom tried to calm people down, but the groom's family started yelling. They said Karen manipulated everything, that Lydia never even wanted to get married. I blinked. That's not new information. Oh, but it gets better, she said, her voice almost gleeful. Someone filmed it. The video's gone viral. The headline reads, "Runaway Bride's Family Meltdown Caught on Camera." And guess what name is trending right below it? I took a slow sip of coffee. I'm afraid to ask. Yours. That made me laugh, really laugh, the kind that starts deep and surprises you. What are they saying? People are calling you the invisible catalyst. They think the wedding fell apart because you weren't invited. There's a whole thread about how families that cut off good men always end up cursed. Cursed, I repeated, shaking my head. That word's getting a lot of use lately. Melissa was laughing so hard she had to pause for air. You can't make this stuff up, Dan. Grandma stood up during the reception and yelled, "This is what happens when you ban family for pride." The guests actually clapped. Karen threw her drink at Aunt Lisa. I had to put down my cup to keep from spilling it. You're serious, dead serious, and get this, the video caught every second of it. Someone uploaded a clip with the caption, "When you ban the wrong person from the wedding." It's at 50,000 views and climbing. I leaned back, smiling. So the family circus went public. How poetic. Melissa lowered her voice a little. You want to hear the real twist? I thought we were already at the twist. Oh no. Lydia called Grandma last night. That caught me off guard. Lydia. Why? She said she never loved Ryan. She only stayed because Karen kept promising her a perfect life. But when the wedding started, she realized she couldn't do it. So she left. I exhaled slowly. So the whole thing was built on lies, pretty much. Lydia told Grandma that if you had been there, she probably wouldn't have gone through with it at all. That maybe she would have had the courage to call it off before humiliating everyone. I rubbed my forehead, half amused, half disgusted. So now I'm the hero in the story they kicked me out of, exactly, Melissa said, barely containing her laughter. They're saying if you'd been there, you would have fixed it. Classic Turner logic. Ruin everything, then wish for you to fix it. Let me guess, I said. Mom's blaming me. She is, but it's not working. The internet's on your side. There's even a meme you lounging in Bali with the caption, "Peace looks good on him." It's hilarious. I couldn't help but laugh again. So I've gone viral for doing nothing. Doing nothing seems to be your new superpower, she teased. We talked for a while longer, Melissa recounting every ridiculous detail, Karen shouting at the band, the groom's mother refusing to pay for the catering, Grandma lecturing anyone within earshot about pride in family. Every piece of it was chaos, and every bit of it proved one thing. I had been right to stay away. When Melissa finally stopped to breathe, she said softly, "You know, I think Grandma's proud of you." She told everyone, "Daniel learned peace the hard way. Maybe now the rest of you will too." That line hit me harder than I expected. I leaned back, staring at the horizon, the sun rising higher over the ocean. Grandma always knew how to find the truth under the noise. "Yeah," Melissa said gently. "She said you were the glue even when no one saw it. That's why everything fell apart without you." I smiled faintly. Well, maybe now they'll stop underestimating silence. We said our goodbyes, and after I hung up, I sat there for a while, letting the conversation settle. The laughter, the irony, the calm, it all circled back to the same thought: they had created the chaos they feared. And I had nothing left to fix. Victor joined me an hour later, still in his robe, carrying 2 glasses of orange juice. "You look like a man who just got good news." "You could say that," I said. "My family's finally realizing the consequences of being themselves." He grinned. "You're enjoying this. Admit it." "Not enjoying," I said, swirling the juice in my glass. appreciating. Victor sat beside me, his eyes on the horizon. So what's next? You gonna fly back, help them pick up the pieces? I shook my head. If I go back now, it ruins the lesson. They need to see what life looks like without me fixing it. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do is nothing. The afternoon passed quietly. I spent it sketching again ideas for the eco-resort, flowing easier than they had in years. It felt good to create without anyone needing something from me. When Victor came by later, I showed him the plans. He studied them for a long moment, then smiled. You know, Dan, you could make a life here. Build something real. Something that doesn't fall apart because someone forgot to invite the right person. I looked out at the ocean. Maybe that's the plan. That evening, I sat on the beach with a glass of wine, the sky turning pink and gold above the waves. The tide was coming in slow and steady. Somewhere behind me, tourists laughed, a guitar strummed softly. For once, the world felt balanced. My phone buzzed again, another message from Melissa. Just thought you should know Ryan's apologizing publicly. Said you didn't deserve what happened. Said he wishes you'd been there. I read it twice, then typed back, tell him I hope he learns to be there for himself. I didn't hit send. I just watched the message blink on the screen for a moment, then deleted it. Some words weren't meant for phones. I stood walking toward the water. The waves touched my feet, cool and cleansing. I thought about Ryan, about Karen, about all the years I'd spent trying to hold everything together. Maybe this was the universe's way of telling me I didn't have to anymore. Behind me, Victor called out. You good? Yeah, I said, turning toward him. Better than good. He smiled. To peace, then. To peace, I echoed. We raised our glasses to the horizon as the first stars began to appear. The waves kept rolling, endless and forgiving, as if the world itself was whispering its approval. They had their drama. I had my calm. And for the first time in my life, that was a trade I was happy to make. The subject line read, I'm sorry. It sat there in my inbox, like a wound trying to close itself. For a long time, I didn't open it. I just stared at those two words, the cursor blinking beside them, like a heartbeat that refused to stop. I could almost hear his voice behind them, nervous, younger than he used to sound, trying to find the right tone between pride and guilt. Finally, I clicked. Dad, I know you're disappointed. I made mistakes. Lydia's gone. Everyone's blaming each other, and honestly, I don't even know who I am in all of this. I should have fought for you to be there. I should have known Mom was wrong. You didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve you. Please, if you can call me. I need to hear your voice. I sat back, the words washing over me like a slow tide. For years, I dreamed of an apology that would make everything better, some perfect sentence that would mend what had been broken. But reading his message, I didn't feel vindication. I didn't feel anger. I just felt still. Maybe that was the real meaning of forgiveness, reaching a place where nothing needed to be fixed anymore. The door opened softly behind me. You look like you've seen a ghost, Victor said, stepping into the room. Something like that, I replied. It's from Ryan. Ah, he said, pulling up a chair beside me. The prodigal son speaks. I handed him the laptop. Read it. Victor scanned the message, his eyebrows lifting slightly. So he's finally realized who kept the walls from falling down. Maybe, I said, or maybe he just needs someone to carry the weight again. Victor looked at me over his glasses. You going to reply? No. He smiled faintly. You always did understand silence better than words. I've spent a lifetime filling gaps for other people, I said. This time, the gap belongs to them. Victor nodded slowly, then tapped the side of my coffee cup with his finger. Then I'd say congratulations. You've just graduated from fixer to philosopher. I laughed quietly. Does that pay better? No, he said, grinning. But it hurts less. The conversation drifted into silence. Outside, the sun had climbed high, turning the ocean into molten silver. The resort buzzed faintly below Voice's laughter music. Life was moving, and for the first time, I was letting it move without me trying to control it. A few hours later, we met with the investors. Victor wanted to finalize the deal for the eco-resort project. I hadn't planned to be involved long-term, but as I sat in that airy seaside restaurant, the breeze warm against my face, I felt something stirring again. A purpose I hadn't touched in years. The papers were spread out across the table. Victor slid a pen toward me. "You sure about this? About building again?" I asked. "About starting again," he said. I looked down at the documents. "I think it's time. But this time I'm building something that doesn't need saving." He smiled. "Then sign it." When the ink hit the paper, I felt a quiet kind of satisfaction, not triumph, not victory, just peace. We celebrated over lunch. The wine was cold, the seafood perfect. Victor raised his glass. "To you, Dan, for finally building something for yourself." I clinked his glass. "To peace, the longest project I've ever worked on." Later, when I returned to my suite, another email was waiting. This one from Karen. "Daniel, I know you're enjoying your little escape, but Ryan's not well. He won't eat, he won't talk. The press is still hounding us. You should be here. He needs his father." I read it twice, then exhaled. The guilt had a familiar tone it always did when it came from her. She knew exactly how to use responsibility as a weapon. I typed a reply, each word deliberate. "He has one, Karen. But you spent years teaching him not to listen to him. Let him learn now. It's the only way he'll ever hear me." Then I deleted it. She didn't deserve the satisfaction of a response. Instead, I walked out onto the balcony, the late afternoon sun painting everything gold. The sea shimmered like something holy. I leaned on the railing, whispering to the wind, "You can't save people who love their cages." That night, as Victor and I sat by the pool with glasses of whiskey, he asked, "You ever think about going back?" "Just to talk, no," I said. "Talking was what broke it. Silence is what's fixing it." He smiled, understanding. "Then here's to silence." "To silence," I echoed. After he went to bed, I stayed by the water. The moonlight hit the waves like scattered glass. I took out my phone, opened Ryan's email again, and read it slowly, line by line. There was a sincerity there I hadn't seen in him before. But there was also fear, the same fear that had made him choose convenience over loyalty, pride over honesty. I whispered, "You'll have to live through it, son. That's how we grow." A breeze rolled over the pool, cool and steady. Somewhere beyond the horizon, tomorrow was waiting quiet and patient. The next morning, I woke to another email. Ryan again. "Dad, I saw your photo. You look happy. I hope you're okay. I'm proud of you." That one made me smile. It wasn't an apology. It was acknowledgement, and maybe that was enough. I didn't reply. Some messages don't need answers. They just need to exist. Instead, I opened my notebook and began sketching again. Lines, curves, towers, something strong, balanced, unshakable. Something that looked like peace turned into structure. When Victor came by, he studied the drawing over my shoulder. "That's beautiful," he said. "You really are back." Maybe I said. But this time, I'm not building for approval. I'm building because I finally remembered how. He clapped my shoulder. "You know what I think?" "What's that?" "I think you found the only kind of revenge that lasts." "Which is?" He smiled. "Happiness." We both laughed. Later that evening, as the sun dipped into the horizon, I received one last email from a journalist asking for a comment on the runaway bride story. They wanted a quote from the estranged father who chose paradise over drama. I typed one line, no comment. I wasn't there. I hit send and closed the laptop. The next day, the article went viral. My single sentence was quoted everywhere, captioned under photos of me sitting by the ocean. Now that Victor said showing me the headline later is class. I smiled. That's peace. When the night came, I poured myself a final drink and stepped out onto the balcony. The air smelled of salt and jasmine. Below, the waves shimmered under the moonlight. My phone lay silent on the table. I whispered softly. They banned me from a wedding, but I built something better, a life that doesn't collapse. The ocean didn't answer, but it didn't need to. It just kept moving. Somewhere out there, Ryan was rebuilding his own wreckage. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid for him. He'd finally learned how to fall apart, and I'd finally learned how to stay whole. The construction site woke with the sun. Metal beams shimmered like ribbons of fire beneath the morning light, and the sound of hammers blended with the steady hush of the ocean. Standing there, I could smell the salt, the sweat, and the promise of something new. For once, it wasn't a skyscraper or someone else's dream taking shape. It was mine. Victor waved from the other side of the lot, a hard hat tilted on his head and a grin plastered across his face. "Look at you," he shouted. "Back in your natural habitat." I smiled, hands resting in my pockets. I thought I'd retired. He walked over, dust rising around his boots. "You don't retire from purpose, Dan. You just forget what it feels like until something reminds you." He was right. Watching the workers move with quiet precision, seeing the outlines of the resort's villas forming against the cliffs, it stirred something in me I hadn't felt in years. The plans that once existed as rough sketches on my balcony had become walls and foundations. The same way my peace had gone from an idea to something solid. When I first came here, I thought I was escaping. But now I knew better. This wasn't running away. It was coming home to myself. The ocean wind caught my shirt warm and alive. I looked out at the waves breaking in their patient rhythm and said softly, "I used to build things for everyone else. This time I'm building something that can stand without me." By mid-morning, I returned to the office on site, a small wooden structure overlooking the beach. On the desk was a single envelope forwarded through the resort's main reception. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, Ryan's. I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. "Dad, I saw the article about your project. I know I don't deserve to be proud, but I am. You always said real strength wasn't about power, it was about peace. I finally understand what you meant. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope we can talk someday, maybe over coffee. No cameras, no guests, just us." The letter was short, but it carried a weight far greater than its words. I folded it gently and set it on the desk. Victor walked in just then, noticing my expression. Another ghost from home. "Ryan," I said quietly. "He's trying." "That's something," Victor replied. "You going to answer?" I shook my head. "Not yet. Time's doing the talking now. I just get in the way." He nodded slowly, understanding. "You know," he said after a pause, "some bridges rebuild themselves when the noise finally dies down." "Maybe," I said. "But some bridges are better left admired from a distance." Victor grinned. "That's the kind of wisdom you only earn after 50. I laughed. "Try 60. The day carried on in the easy rhythm of progress, meetings, sketches, laughter. I lunched with the local team, shared ideas about sustainability, watched the workers teach each other small tricks of the trade. There was something sacred about the simplicity of it all, people creating something honest with their hands, with purpose. As the afternoon heat softened, I walked the perimeter of the site, listening to the distant buzz of drills and the gulls circling above. A young architect approached one of the interns from Jakarta. "Mr. Turner," she said shyly, "can I ask something?" "Of course," I said. She hesitated, then smiled. "How do you know when something's finished?" I looked at her for a long moment, then gestured toward the horizon. "When you stop trying to perfect it. And when you can walk away, knowing it will stand, even if you don't touch it again." She nodded, eyes bright. "That's beautiful." I smiled. "It's true." Later that evening, Victor and I sat at the beachside bar as the sky began to darken. Lanterns floated in the water like drifting stars. The workers had finished for the day. Laughter echoed from the cabins nearby. Victor raised his glass. "To new beginnings, built on better endings." "To endings that finally made sense," I said, clinking his glass. The wine was smooth, the air soft. For the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about what could go wrong. I wasn't thinking about fixing, explaining, or defending. I was simply here, present, whole. After dinner, I returned to my villa. The room smelled faintly of wood polish and ocean air. On the table lay something new, a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. The concierge must have dropped it off while I was out. Inside was a photo frame, simple and old. In it, a picture of Ryan as a boy, sitting on the beach building a sandcastle. His handwriting was on a note attached to the back. "Found this while cleaning Mom's house. Thought you should have it." I remember that day. You said no wave could erase what's built with care. I didn't understand it then. I do now. My throat tightened. I set the photo on the nightstand beside the bed. For a long time, I just looked at it, the sound of the waves filtering through the open balcony door. "Maybe some bridges do rebuild themselves," I whispered. I stepped outside. The sky was deep purple now. Stars spread like salt across velvet. The resort glowed softly in the distance, lanterns swaying in the breeze. Workers' laughter carried faintly across the night air. I walked down to the edge of the water, shoes in hand. The tide lapped gently at my feet. I could see the outline of the half-built pier reaching out into the dark water, still waiting for its final boards. I remembered something I'd said to Ryan once when he was little, and his kite had gotten stuck in a tree. "If I do it for you every time, you'll never learn to climb." Now standing here, I understood what I hadn't. Then love isn't rescuing someone every time they fall. It's teaching them that they can stand back up on their own. Behind me, Victor's voice called softly. "You're still working always," I said with a smile. He joined me by the water hands in his pockets. "You ever think you'll go back?" "I think I already did," I said. "Just not to a place. To a part of myself I left behind." He smiled, understanding. "To peace, then." "To peace," I echoed. The two of us stood there, the waves gliding over our feet, the stars above us endless and bright. For once, the night didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. When I returned to my room, I placed Ryan's photo beside my sketches on the desk. I ran my hand over the frame, then picked up my pencil and added one last note at the corner of the drawing piece, like architecture begins with balance. As I set the pencil down, a soft breeze moved through the curtains, and I could have sworn it carried the faintest whisper of home. I looked at the picture again, smiled, and turned off the light. The ocean murmured beyond the glass, patient and eternal, as if reminding me that some structures like forgiveness don't need foundations to stand. Peace has a sound. It isn't silence. It's the rhythm of waves colliding with the shore, the distant laughter of strangers who don't know your name, and the soft voice in your head that finally stops arguing with the past. That morning, Bali was breathing. The world was moving slowly, as if it had decided I'd earned one more quiet sunrise. I stood on the balcony, coffee in hand, looking over the nearly completed resort. The roofs shimmered under the early light, palm leaves swayed, and the ocean stretched beyond everything. like a mirror that forgave all mistakes. For years I had built things for other people, homes, companies, dreams, and all of them had fallen apart one way or another. This time I had built something that didn't require anyone else to stand beside it. The workers waved when they saw me. I waved back. It felt good to belong to something without needing to possess it. Victor joined me a few minutes later, yawning, holding his cup of tea. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. "Too much peace in the air. I might get addicted." He laughed, leaning against the railing. "You've changed, Dan." "I hope so," I said. "It took me 50 years to stop trying to fix everything. Now I just build what lasts." He nodded toward the construction below. "And that's going to last." I smiled. "That's the plan." Later that morning, after the site meeting, one of the local staff handed me a small envelope. It had come through the mail service, forwarded again from Seattle. The handwriting on it was familiar Ryan's. I opened it carefully. Inside was a photo Ryan and me years ago standing beside his first car. On the back he'd written, "Thanks for teaching me how to stand when things fall apart. I'm still learning. I love you, Dad." The note was short, but it said everything it needed to. I slipped the photo into my wallet next to an old snapshot of him building sandcastles when he was a child. Then I went for a walk along the beach. The tide was low, the sand soft beneath my feet. The wind carried the scent of sea salt and flowers from the nearby temple. I thought about everything that had happened, the anger, the humiliation, the messages, the silence, and realized I no longer felt bitterness, only distance. Distance with meaning. When you stop demanding apologies, life starts giving you understanding instead. Halfway down the shore, I saw a group of children playing with driftwood, laughing as they built their own castle in the sand. One boy looked up and grinned at me. "Are you building too?" he asked in a mix of English and Indonesian. I shook my head. "Not today." He nodded solemnly, then said, "That's okay. You look like someone who already finished." I smiled. Maybe I did. By sunset, Victor and I stood together on the pier, watching the water turn gold and then black. The resort lights came alive one by one, behind us lanterns swaying in the evening breeze. He handed me a glass of wine. "To completion," he said. "To peace," I answered. He took a sip and grinned. "You ever gonna tell your son about this place?" "Maybe," I said. "When it's finished. When he's ready to see peace as something you build, not something you ask for." Victor nodded, quiet for once. "He'll come around. People usually do when they realize silence isn't punishment, it's patience." I looked out at the horizon. I hope so. But even if he doesn't, I'll still be here. That's enough. Later that night, after Victor turned in, I stayed by the water alone. The sky was wide, filled with stars. The waves whispered like an old friend, repeating the same story I never got tired of hearing. I thought about the last few months, about the day Karen's message arrived, about the airport coffee, the first step onto the sand, the long nights when I almost called home. Every one of those moments had led me here. I wasn't the man who'd been left off a wedding list anymore. I wasn't the fixer or the forgotten. I was just a man who had finally learned that peace is louder than apology. A breeze rolled through, carrying the faint scent of jasmine. I reached into my pocket, took out the compass I'd once bought as a wedding gift for Ryan, the one I thought I'd lost to the sea. The maintenance crew had found it weeks ago, tangled in the rocks beneath the pier. It still shone in the moonlight, engraved words faint but clear. "Always find your way home," I whispered. "Home isn't a place, son. It's a feeling." Then I walked to the edge of the pier and tossed it gently into the waves. The water caught it, held it for a moment, then carried it away. In the quiet that followed, I felt something unspoken settle in my chest, closure, forgiveness, and a strange, beautiful lightness. The next morning, I sat at my desk to write one final note, not to Ryan, but to myself. Dear Dan, you kept showing up even when no one noticed. You learned when to stop knocking. You learned that silence doesn't mean absence. It means peace. You lost what wasn't yours and found what always was. That's your legacy. I folded the letter and placed it inside the drawer beside the blueprints for the final phase of the resort. By noon, the workers had finished the last section of the boardwalk. They waved for me to come down. I walked barefoot across the new wooden path until I reached the edge where it met the sea. A young architect took a picture for the project archive. "Smile, Mr. Turner," she said. I did. A real one this time. The kind that comes when you no longer need to prove anything. As the shutter clicked, I thought, they built a wedding that fell apart. I built a life that didn't. That evening, I sat again by the balcony, the sound of the waves blending with the laughter of guests below. The resort lights glowed like stars reborn on Earth. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel like I was in exile. I felt exactly where I was supposed to be. Before going to bed, I opened my laptop, the cursor blinking on a blank page. I typed a single line. They once called me overreactive. Now they call me at peace. Then I looked into the camera and smiled. If you've ever been pushed aside by the people you love, I said quietly, remember sometimes being left out is just life's way of clearing space for something better. Tell me, what would you have done if you were me? Would you forgive, or would you walk away? Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. And if this one found you at the right time, stay a while. There are more stories like this waiting for you. The screen faded to black as the ocean kept whispering. Peace at last had learned my name.